Hello and welcome to IAMC Radio and Podcast. We're going to explore the top news headlines for today, April 5th. Lots to cover, from legal issues all over the world, U.S. and Nigerian relations, and things happening here in the U.S.
Yeah, quite a bit of news today. We'll be looking at charges in the UK, a sextortion case with some international connections, a suspension of a government official in Nigeria, some major protests in the U.S., activities by the Nigerian Navy, a police issue in Nigeria, a traditional event, the TikTok situation, and then some U.S.-Nigeria trade news.
So let's jump right in, shall we? Starting overseas with the big one. The British actor Russell Brand has been charged with several sexual offenses.
Yeah, it looks like it's 1 count of rape, 1 count of oral rape, 1 count of indecent assault, and 2 counts of sexual assault.
Wow. Now, these charges, are they from that big 18-month investigation by the London Metropolitan Police?
That's right. Allegations come from 4 women, and the incidents allegedly happened between 1999 and 2005.
Now, just a reminder to our listeners, these are just allegations at this point. It'll all have to be proven in court.
Absolutely.
So these accusations first came out after that joint investigation by Channel 4 and the Sunday Times back in September, right?
Yep, back in September of last year. And at that time, Russell Brand denied everything. Said all his relationships were totally consensual.
And now the Crown Prosecution Service, they've decided there's enough to bring these charges.
Right. The CPS looked everything over carefully and decided they have enough evidence to move forward. Of course, this is an ongoing legal case, so Russell Brand, like anyone in his situation, deserves a fair trial. But he's scheduled to be in a London court on May 2nd.
So for those who might not know who Russell Brand is, he's pretty big in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
Started as a comedian, did radio and TV.
Right.
He's done some acting too. Get Him to the Greek comes to mind.
Yeah, good one.
And he's also written some memoirs about his struggles with addiction.
Oh, right.
And was, for a bit, married to Katy Perry, the singer.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But these days, he's mostly online, with a lot of followers posting about wellness and politics and even some conspiracy theories.
Right. And actually, he lives here in the U.S. now.
Well, let's move over to the U.S. now. There's a pretty disturbing case, specifically in Georgia, that shows how global these online crimes can be. A man named Jonathan Demetrius Green has admitted to being part of a money laundering conspiracy with 4 other people.
And not just small change, right? We're talking at least $150,000. Money that was extorted from victims through sextortion.
Yeah, really awful.
And the worst part is, it seems this money ended up going to a criminal group in Nigeria called The Plug.
Yep, and Green has actually pleaded guilty to money laundering conspiracy. And what's even sadder is that this case is connected to the suicide of a Michigan teenager, Jordan DeMay, back in 2022.
Oh, that's right. He was a victim of this whole scheme.
He was.
It's just awful.
It is.
So how did it all work?
Well, from what the prosecutors have said, Green and the 4 others collected the money through online payment systems like Apple Pay, Cash App, Zelle, the usual.
Right.
They kept around 20% for themselves, then they turned the rest into Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
Yeah, Bitcoin, because it's, kind of anonymous.
Right. And harder to track.
Exactly. And then The Plug, they moved the money to the guys doing the actual sextortion. There's Samuel and Samson Ogoshi and others.
Oh, the Ogoshi brothers, the ones who got sentenced to 17 years each for that massive international sextortion ring.
Those are the ones.
So these criminals, they trick people, mostly young people, I imagine, into sending naked pictures of themselves.
Yeah, and then they use those photos to blackmail them.
Just terrible. In Jordan DeMay's case, he sent $300 to Green's Apple Pay account. And that money, it went through Cash App, got changed into Bitcoin, and landed with the Ogoshi brothers, who apparently even encouraged him to,
Yeah, it's really a tragedy. And it shows the real damage these online crimes can cause.
Now, there are 4 other men who have also pleaded guilty.
That's right. There's Dinsmore Guyton Robinson, Kendall Ormond London, Brian Keith Coleman, and Jarrell Divon Williams. They were all involved.
And they're trying to get a 3rd person connected to the Ogoshi case, Ezekiel Ijehem Robert. Yep. Tried to extradite him in 2023, but no one knows where he is now.
It's crazy how much money was involved. These 5 guys, they laundered at least $178,658 just between 2020 and 2022.
Yeah, and now they could face up to 20 years in prison.
Wow. This whole case really shows how important it is to fight these online crimes, internationally, and to protect people, especially young people, from these kinds of predators.
Absolutely. All right, let's shift gears a bit. Over in Nigeria, in Kebbi State, the governor, Nasir Idris, has suspended a top official, Nasiru Abubakar Kigo.
This is the permanent secretary, right?
That's him.
And he's also an Islamic cleric.
Yeah, that's right.
What happened?
Well, it seems he said something pretty controversial during a Ramadan seminar.
Something about gay and lesbian people.
Yeah, he claimed that Kebbi and Sokoto states have the highest numbers of registered gays and lesbians in the whole country.
Wow. And that's why he got suspended.
Seems so, yeah. The governor's chief press secretary confirmed that it's an indefinite suspension. And the head of service in Kebbi State, he sent out a letter saying that Kigo broke civil service rules, called it social misconduct, and said it hurt the state's reputation.
So basically he said something he shouldn't have said, especially in his position.
Pretty much. The statement called Kigo's claims misleading and unacceptable in a morally decent society.
Well, that's pretty strong language.
Yeah, no kidding. And he's staying suspended while they investigate.
And I bet the Kebbi State government wants to put this whole thing behind them as quickly as possible.
Definitely. They came out and said Kigo's statements were fictitious and baseless.
Yeah, they probably don't want this to escalate any further.
Right. Definitely a sensitive situation.
Now, back here in the U.S., we're seeing protests all over the place. It looks like over 1,100 hands-off. Protests and meetings were planned in all 50 states this past Saturday, April 5th.
Yeah, they're pushing back against the big cuts to the federal workforce. They think Trump's advisor, Elon Musk, is behind it all.
Yeah, and that it's part of some plan to gut public services like Social Security, Medicaid, public education.
Exactly. More than 150 organizations are involved in these protests. You've got Planned Parenthood Action Fund, the SEIU, the ACLU, a whole bunch of others. They're saying Trump and Musk are just looking out for themselves and hurting everyone else.
It's classic clash of ideologies. You know, you've got one side that's advocating for a smaller government and less spending.
And the other side saying that these cuts are going to hurt the most vulnerable people in society.
Exactly. It's a debate that's been going on for decades.
Yeah.
So what are Trump and Musk saying about all this?
Well, they're saying these job cuts are necessary to deal with the huge national debt and to balance the budget. They're comparing it to personal finances, saying if an individual has to live within their means, so should the government.
It's an appealing argument, but of course, the issue is much more complex than that.
Absolutely.
So where were the biggest protests happening?
Looks like the biggest one was supposed to be in Washington, D.C. on the National Mall.
Right in front of the White House?
Yep, right in the heart of the Capitol.
Did that affect any events at the White House?
Actually, yeah. The White House Spring Garden Tours, which were supposed to be on Saturday, got pushed back a day because of the protests.
Oh, interesting. So the First Lady didn't want the tourists caught up in all that?
Probably not. It's also worth mentioning that the protest organizers really stressed nonviolence. They even had training for people on how to de-escalate things if they run into trouble with the police or counter-protesters.
Smart move. Things can get out of hand pretty quickly at these events.
For sure. And it looks like a lot of people were planning on going. Over 250,000 people had RSVP'd by the end of March.
Yeah, this wasn't just a small gathering. There were also those Tesla takedown protests at Tesla dealerships back on March 29th.
Right, people are definitely not happy with the direction things are going. And former Vice President Mike Pence, he's actually spoken out against Trump's tariffs.
What did he say?
He called them the largest peacetime tax hike in U.S. history. So even within the Republican Party, there's some disagreement on this issue.
Interesting. All right, let's move back over to Nigeria now, where the Nigerian Navy has been busy cracking down on illegal activities in the Niger Delta. Their Operation Delta Sanity II in March resulted in a bunch of seized ships carrying illegal weapons and stolen crude oil. They also shut down a whole bunch of illegal refineries.
Yeah, the Navy's Director of Information said they've been doing a lot. For instance, on March 7th, they found and destroyed an illegal refinery in Delta State.
How much oil did they find there?
About 5,500 liters of stolen crude oil and 2,000 liters of illegally refined bilogo, automotive gas oil. Basically, diesel fuel.
Oh, right.
Then, just the next day, they caught a big wooden boat full of crude oil in Rivers State.
How much?
Around 40,000 liters. And then on March 9th, they caught a ship called MFT Olokun 8th in Bayelsa State with illegal guns and ammo on board.
What kind of guns?
A G3 rifle, a pump-action shotgun, 20 rounds of 752 and 1mm ammo, and 7 live cartridges.
Did they catch anyone?
They arrested 2 guys connected to the guns, and all through March, they found and shut down more illegal refineries, places where oil pipelines were damaged, and tons of stolen crude oil and refined products in both Delta and River states. They grabbed more ships and boats full of this stuff in Bayelsa and River states, too.
Sounds like they're really trying to get a handle on this.
They are. And on March 27th, they found and shut down a camp that they think was used by cultists and kidnappers. It also had illegal refining equipment and products.
So this is obviously a huge problem for Nigeria.
It is, yeah. It's a constant battle. But the chief of naval staff said they're not giving up. They're going to ramp up their operations to stop oil theft and protect Nigeria's economy.
Good. Now, in other news from Nigeria, the Kaduna State Police Command arrested a man named Hidina Hussaini, who also goes by Dantamaki.
Yeah, this was after he posted some pretty disturbing stuff on Facebook.
What did he do?
He was in a police uniform in the photos, and he was threatening to get revenge on people from the south who live in the north.
Who is this about?
It was in response to the killing of 16 northerners in Uromi, Edo State. He was using some really inflammatory language and said he was going to get his revenge within a week.
Wow, that's pretty serious.
Yeah, it caused a lot of anger and fear. The police in Kaduna quickly came out and said that Hussaini wasn't actually a member of the police force.
So he was impersonating a police officer?
It seems that way. He used to be in the Police Special Constabulary, which is a volunteer group, but he got kicked out 2 years ago for bad behavior.
And the uniform he was wearing in the photos?
It was from his time in the constabulary. It had the PSCKD insignia on it, which stands for Police Special Constabulary Kaduna. And the police confirmed that the photo was taken before he was dismissed.
So basically, he was using his old uniform to try and give his threats more weight.
Exactly. The police arrested him right after he posted that stuff, and he's in custody now. They're going to charge him once they finish investigating.
That's good to hear. The police need to take these kinds of threats seriously.
Definitely. Moving on, let's go to Oyo State in Nigeria. The new Alaafin of Oyo, Oba Akim Owodo, is going to be officially crowned this Saturday, April 5th.
This is 3 years after the last Alaafin passed away, right?
That's right. And there's going to be tight security all around Oyo town. Lots of security personnel will be there to make sure everything goes smoothly.
So who is this new Alaafin?
Oba Akim Owodo. He's a 49-year-old entrepreneur and philanthropist, Nigerian and Canadian.
Interesting.
Yeah, Governor Seyi Makinde appointed him as the 46th Alaafin of Oyo back in January. It was a long and complicated process, and there were even some legal challenges.
So it wasn't an easy road to the throne.
Not at all. And before the coronation, they had a 21-day curfew in Oyo town so they could do the traditional rites. It's called Oro Ipebi.
What does that mean?
It's basically a period of seclusion and rituals before the coronation. It's all part of their tradition. And Governor Makinde already gave Oba Ode his staff and certificate of office, so he's officially recognized.
So this coronation is a big deal for the Oyo Kingdom.
Definitely. It's a major cultural event.
All right, our last international story for today is about TikTok. You know, the social media app.
Ah, TikTok. Always in the news.
It seems President Trump has given them another 75 days to either sell their U.S. operations to an American company or get banned in the U.S.
Yeah, this is actually their second extension. The first one was back in January and was supposed to expire this past Saturday.
So what did Trump say about it?
He said on his, social media platform that he doesn't want TikTok to disappear from the U.S. He's hoping they can work something out with TikTok in China.
And just to remind everyone, TikTok is owned by the Chinese company ByteDance.
Right, and there's that U.S. law from 2024 that says ByteDance has 9 months to sell off TikTok's U.S. operations.
And while this expansion is in place, the U.S. won't enforce the part of the law that would ban app stores from offering TikTok.
Exactly. They had that little hiccup right before Trump's inauguration where they briefly shut down and then quickly came back. They said it was because Trump delayed the ban.
Right.
And ByteDance says they're still talking with the Trump administration, but they haven't made a deal yet.
And even if they do, it still has to be okay with the Chinese government.
That's right.
Well, it looks like the saga of TikTok in the U.S. continues.
It does. All right, last but not least, let's talk about the U.S. and Nigeria. Seems like U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau had a chat on the phone with Nigeria's Foreign Minister, Yusuf Tuggar.
A diplomatic call.
Exactly. They talked about boosting trade, improving security, and strengthening their overall relationship.
And this call happened after Trump put that 14% tariff on things coming from Nigeria to the U.S.
Yeah, the U.S. said it's because of a trade imbalance. They pointed out that Nigeria has a 27% tariff on things coming from the U.S.
So Trump's basically saying he wants things to be fairer.
That's how he's spinning it. He says it's all about protecting American businesses and making sure trade is a two-way street.
Well, this definitely adds a new wrinkle to the U.S.-Nigeria relationship.
It does. It'll be interesting to see what happens next.
Okay, so just to recap, the big stories we covered today were the charges against Russell Brand in the UK, the Georgia sextortion case with its ties to a Nigerian criminal group, the suspended official in Kebbi State, the nationwide protests here in the U.S., the Nigerian Navy's actions in the Niger Delta, the arrests of that former police officer in Nigeria, the upcoming coronation of the new Alaafin of Oyo, the latest on the TikTok situation, and the tariff on goods from Nigeria.
Quite a roundup.
As always, we're committed to bringing you the news with a focus on truth and justice.
These are important events, and we'll keep following them to see what unfolds.
Thank you for listening to today's top news headlines on IAMC Radio and Podcast.